I'd like to welcome you to another session, another Sunday school session of the New Jerusalem Missionary Baptist Church, where Reverend Ronald Speaks is our pastor and trustee Darrell Marcus is our Sunday school superintendent. We have another wonderful lesson that's encouraging us to love one another. That's what we'll be talking about for the next couple of months. And we have been dealing with the life of Joseph, lifting up some chapters out of his life, good examples that will show us how to love one another during difficult times. We had our first lesson was on issues of love, when there's jealousy and envy in a family and what that can do. The hard times, when it's hard to love one another. And then we went on to talk about how God rewards obedience, when you need the faith to trust God, when things are not going good, when when you're being lied on or talked about, or somebody's jealous of you and you're still expected to love. We talked about how we need to trust God, have faith to trust in God when things are not going good. And when we have that faith to trust God, we can show the love that we're supposed to have. And then on our last lesson, we talked about love versus guilt. And today, our lesson, the title of our lesson is God's Plan Revealed. We're coming from Genesis, the 45th chapter, 1st through the 15th verses. God's Plan Revealed. The last time we talked, we had the brothers, the 10 brothers. They had went to Egypt. They had got some food for the family, and they went back home, 9 of the brothers, because Joseph kept one, and they were supposed to go home and bring back their younger brother, Benjamin. Joseph just wants to know how they would treat Benjamin. But they went back home, and they told their father that they needed Benjamin to go back with them if they were to buy any more food. And Reuben had told his daddy that let Jacob know that he could trust Benjamin with them. He'd already lost one son that was dear to his heart, and he had transferred all that love to Benjamin. And he even assured his daddy, he said, "Dad, if I don't bring Benjamin back safe, you can kill my sons." Jacob wasn't interested in killing his grandsons. He just told them plain and simple, Benjamin's not going to Egypt. End of subject. Well, it was end of subject until the food started running low. Now, Jacob, they have a big family. Jacob and all of his 11 sons, all of them are married with children of their own, had a total of 66 people plus Jacob. Now, 66 people plus Jacob eating, they can go through some food. So they went through that food they got from Egypt. Food run out. So Jacob looks at them and tells them to go back to Egypt to buy some more food. Famine's still rolling on. And they told Jacob, Judah speaks up and he tells them, Dad, we told you we cannot go back to Egypt unless Benjamin goes with us. The man said, we cannot see his face unless we bring Benjamin. That's why Simeon, he kept Simeon in quarters. He said, we could have been to Egypt twice. By now, if you had let us go on. But Jacob wouldn't do it. So Judah speaks and he says, I myself will guarantee his safety, and you can hold me personally responsible forever. I will look out for Benjamin. I'll make sure that Benjamin gets back here safe. You can trust Benjamin to go with us to Egypt. And so Jacob had a choice. Either send Benjamin or they would starve. So, of course, he chose the wiser, just that he had to let Benjamin go, and he told them to take back their money, double the money, because, of course, Joseph had slipped the money back to them, and he told them to take the money back and take a little present for Joseph, some honey and some nuts that they had, and to go back to Egypt and go ahead and take Benjamin. And Jacob said, if I'm bereaved of my sons, I'm bereaved. Or if I lose my sons, I lose. He knew he had to get more food for the family. So they're going back. So the brothers are on their way back to Egypt. And then they show up in Egypt, and Joseph sees his brother Benjamin. He wants to make sure that's Benjamin. The last time he saw Benjamin was just a little boy. That was over 20 years ago. Now Benjamin is grown up. He's a grown man with children of his own. And Joseph gives them an invitation to have lunch with him. He tells his people, his servants, to prepare lunch for them, which first the brothers were suspicious. Well, when you're feeling guilty, any good thing sometimes people do for you, you can't see the good in it because you're always looking for bad. But, and they felt like Joseph was going to chastise them in some way because they had the money. But Joseph's just invited them to lunch. And I want to point out something here. As we know, in our time now, right now, we're dealing with different issues with what's going on in 2020. And one of the things that we're talking about now is racism. But I want you to know, racism has always existed, and it's just not in America. It's probably in countries all over the world. Every country has some kind of racism going on. But it even shows up in our lesson. In Genesis, the 43rd chapter, 32nd verse, it says they were preparing for the brothers to eat lunch with Joseph. Joseph's workers or his servants had to set up 3 different places. One for Joseph by himself, and then another one for the brothers to sit by themselves. And then there was another place for the Egyptians to sit and eat, which they did eat by themselves. And the scripture says, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for this is an abomination to the Egyptians. Now that's mind-blowing to me. It's because of Joseph that they got food to eat. But in spite of that, they still did not want to eat with the Hebrews. That's like, you're responsible for me having food, but I still don't want to eat with you because you're you. And that's just mind-boggling. That shows how racism has always existed. And it takes the Lord to deliver us from it. But it was even back here during this time, and that was just mind-boggling to me. It jumped out because Joseph is the one who has let them know that the famine was coming. And he has saved up food so they would have something to eat. And yet they still will not eat with the Hebrews. Why? Just because they're Hebrews. That's all. And it's ridiculous, and it's evil. And it's just a part of the sin of mankind. We live in a sin-cursed world. And as long as there are people who are willing to push others down to lift themselves up, that's racism in a nutshell. People who want to push others down to lift themselves up, that shows our need for the grace of God. But anyway, as I said, racism has always existed since mankind. But anyway, back to our lesson. They sit there and they eat, and Joseph gives them all special presents, so to speak, and he gives Benjamin even more, trying to see how his brothers will react to Benjamin being favored, which they accepted it. And anyway, after they finished eating and they had a nice meal with Joseph, Joseph gave the orders to give them the food that they wanted, but he also told his servants to slip his silver cup in Benjamin's bag and then let them go away, and then they was going to go after them. And that's what they did. They gave the brothers all the food that they had come to buy and gave them back their money, and then hid Joseph's cup among Benjamin's packages. And then they let them go on from Egypt. They're on their way back home. And then they rode up behind them and stopped them and accused them of stealing from Joseph. Want to know why would they do such a thing after Joseph had been so kind? And of course the brothers say, no, we haven't stolen anything, which they hadn't. And they said, if you find any of his belongings among our packages, then that person can be a servant, because they was feeling secure because they knew they hadn't stolen anything. So they were saying, you're not going to find anything. So they went through all of the brothers' belongings. And then they went through Benjamin's, and there was Joseph's cup, of course, because it had been planted there. And the brothers tore their clothes, and as I had said previously, that's a sign of grief, extreme grief with the Jews. Well, they didn't just send Benjamin back by himself and say, they found the covenant, you go back and deal with it. All of them went back to Egypt with him. And then Judah talks to, Joseph told them, he said, well, the only one I want is Benjamin. He the one that had my cup. The rest of y'all can go on back to Canaan. He has to stay here and be a servant. I'm punishing him. But the rest of you all can go. And Judah spoke up and said, I can't go back to Canaan without Benjamin. Said, my father didn't want to let him come, but we talked him into it. I talked him into it because you told us, don't come back without him. And I assured my father that I would take care of him. And if I go back home without him, it would break my father's heart. It would bring him down to his grave. So he loves him too much. Says, and then Judah did something wonderful. He said, let Benjamin go back home and I'll stay here and I'll be your servant. He was willing to sacrifice himself. Look at how time has brought about a change. Now, over 20 years ago, it was Judah, the one who they was hating Joseph so much that he wanted to sell him. At first, they wanted to kill him. But then Reuben talked him out of that. But it was Judah, the one that said, let's sell him for a servant. But look at the big change that has happened. Judah was willing to sacrifice himself to keep Benjamin safe. And let me also remind you that Judah is the tribe that Jesus came from. Judah was Jesus' great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. And it's just a wonderful example of self-sacrificing. But anyway, when Judah was willing to offer himself up for his brother, that did it for Joseph. That showed him what he needed to see, that his brothers were not still the same envious, selfish, don't care men that they were when he was a teenager. Time had brought about a change. And time should bring about a change with all of us. People should be able to see a change in your life for the better. And this is where we have the big reveal, and we'll pick up reading in our lesson in Genesis, the 45th chapter, starting at the first verse. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? Now, when they've been there, they've been calling Joseph by the Egyptian names, Zaphnath-Paneah. But Joseph finally, and he'd been speaking to them through an interpreter, he finally is speaking Hebrew to them, and he is holding up to his Hebrew name. He says, I am Joseph. Does my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. Of course, they were in shock. They've been talking to this man, and he's been carrying them through all these changes. And now they're saying that he's Joseph. They've been thinking all these years that Joseph was dead. And now this man with all this power in Egypt is their brother, their baby brother that they got rid of years ago. 4th verse says, and Joseph said unto his brethren, come near to me. They were standing far off. It was just a lot to sink in. Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. Look what the Lord did for that young man. After all he's been through, he's able to see that God was behind it all. He's revealing God's plan revealed. I'm reading that again, the 5th verse. For God did send me before you to preserve life. That's what it was all about. That was the whole reason behind Joseph being sold into slavery, that was behind him going to jail, that was behind him being lied on, everything that he went through, God had a plan. Going on down to your 6th verse, it says, for these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 more years, in the which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. Wow, it just amazes me how the Lord worked with that young man, and it shows what God can do for you in the midst of a bad situation, how he can work with your mind and show you how he's working it out. Romans 8:28 tells us, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. God got a purpose for it all. God had a perfect plan in mind, and he used the brothers' sinful acts to preserve his chosen people. God knew what was coming, and somewhere or another he had to make a way for them out of Canaan. And he used their jealousy, their envy, their willing to lie and trick their father. He used all of that to bring about some good. God is in control even when situations seem evil and chaotic. As you think in your life, have you ever avoided something or dreaded something and found out it was the best thing for you? You go all around the bend to avoid maybe moving or to avoid this job, and then a big change in your life, you try to avoid it or try to not make it happen. And when it happens anyway, in spite of you, you find out that that was the best thing for you. And if you knew, you wished you had realized how it was, you wouldn't have fought against it so hard. God has a plan and purpose in everything he allows us to go through. It may appear as though the enemy is having his way, but be assured God's plan is being fulfilled. What Satan means for evil, God works it out for good. Sometimes things happen that we don't understand, and it hurts. We're not going to say that problems aren't problems. They are problems. But in those tough times, we can trust that God is with us and giving us the grace to endure. He gives us the grace to go through whatever it is we got to go through. And this lesson, what we went through with Joseph, that sometimes we will have to go through hard times. It's not going to always be easy. You're going to have some tough times. In Job, I believe it says, man born of a woman is of a few days, and those are full of trouble. So we're going to have problems. And then we come on down to the 9th verse, where Joseph is still talking to his brothers. He says, haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, thus says thy son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, and tarry not, and thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen. And thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, herds, and all that you have. And there will I nourish ye, for yet there are 5 more years of famine, lest thy household and all that thou have come to poverty. Way back when God called Abraham, when Abraham's name was just Abram, and he changed his name to Abraham, saying father of a multitude. And he told Abraham that he would make of him a great nation. Where God is going to do that, he's going to start in Egypt. They are going to come out of Egypt about 2 million. He's going to grow up and let them multiply. God had his own, and it's all in his plan. It's all him working out that promise that he made to Abraham, that he was going to grow and multiply his seed. So it's all working for a purpose. God has a plan, and it's all good. God has a way of working things out that can only be done by his hand. Only God could take a young man that was bought as a slave, that's how Joseph was, and allow him to go from slavery to jail. You wouldn't, ordinary people don't look for big things for someone coming out of jail, but you don't give up on people because they're in jail. God can still do great things with their life. So this week, if you are met with a challenge, focus on seeing God at work in that situation. Be on the lookout for those God moments when you end up in a situation and you're like, Lord, and you know you haven't done anything to bring it about. Say to yourself, okay, why am I here? What am I supposed to learn? Lord, help me to have the right attitude so I can learn whatever it is you want me to learn, so I can do whatever it is you want me to do. What we have to do is learn how to get our minds off ourselves and think about what it is God wants to do. These are God moments, especially in the difficult situations when people are lying on you without a cause, or when stuff just goes so wrong and you know you haven't done anything to bring it about. That's a God moment. Or even if you bring some things down on yourself, even if you make it happen, God can still work good out of it. And as we move on down, is Joseph, he's not, we move on down to the 15th verse. We're going to skip. Says, moreover, he kissed all his brethren and wept upon them. And after that, his brethren talked with him. He kissed those very men that had stripped him of his coat, his wonderful coat that his dad made for him, put him down in a pit, left him there while they sat there and ate, and then sold him. He hugged them and kissed them. How do you treat people that you say you have forgiven? That's something to think about. It's the way you treat them will show that if you really have forgiven them. He kissed and hugged his brother. Joseph is a man that didn't mind showing his feelings. And that's what I like about him. And we see a great moment of reconciliation. Is there someone in your life you have been unable to forgive? Is there someone you just say, no, they don't deserve to be forgiven after what they did to me? What you need to do is ask the Lord to help you forgive. Because first of all, the forgiveness is for you, to relieve you of that bad feeling. Because when you hold on to those hard feelings, and I look at TV and I see where someone is grieving over the loss of a loved one, and they've got a right to grieve. And they say, I will never forgive you. And I pray for them. I say, Lord, help them to forgive. Help them to let go of that, which it is very hard. And we can't do it without God's help. I found out that if you're just honest to God and let him know, God, I do not want to forgive them. I don't think they deserve forgiveness after what they did to me. I deserve better than that out of them. After all I've done for them to do that to me, or even if you haven't done anything, for just somebody to come after you as a victim. If you just lift it up to God and let God know, he already knows, he just wants you to admit, God is not in me to forgive them. I think they need to be punished. I would like to see them punished. As a matter of fact, I believe they deserve to go to hell for what they did for me. And I wouldn't mind watching them. They could go to hell in a kerosene suit, and I wouldn't mind watching them burn. Just be honest and lift up that ugly feeling to God. And let God know, take it from me. This is how I really feel. I want them to suffer for what they did to me, and I want to see them suffer. I want to see it. I want to see it. You need to say, Lord, deliver me from that harsh feeling. Cleanse me. And just pray honest to God. Say, take it from me. And he will. I know he will, because I've been that way towards people. Take that ugly feeling from me. That ugly, hateful feeling from me. And help me to forgive. And help me to mean it. Cleanse me up. He will. And when I see them, help me to speak. Help me to look at them. Because sometimes you be so mad at folks you don't want to speak. You don't want to look at them. You don't want them breathing the same air you breathe. You know, you be just that bent out of shape. Help me to speak. If I see where I'm having a hard time speaking to people, help me to speak, Lord. That shows me that it's something in me. Because God wants us to show love. So if there's someone in your life you've had a hard trouble, you've been unable to forgive, admit it, own up to it, and then offer it up to God for healing for you, so that you can be what he would have you to be. But this is, we've had a good lesson with Joseph. It's so much. These lessons are very relevant for now. For what we're going through now. We look at stuff in the Bible, we said it happened years ago. It did, but we're still people. And what went for them goes for us today. So, I want to thank you for joining us, for being with us this month for these lessons. All our unit will be talking about for this month and for the next 2 months, we're talking about how we should have love for one another. So I ask that you would please join us again for another Sunday school lesson where I'll be passing the baton to another very capable member of our Sunday school staff who will bring us 4 more wonderful lessons in October, encouraging us to love one another. Jesus tells us in John 15:12, he told his disciples, and this goes for us, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." And the only way we can do that is with God's help. So I pray that God will continue to stir up your hunger for his word, that you will read into it and see how it can help you, and that you will continue to grow in his grace and in his mercy. We look forward to you being with us again for another Sunday school session, and pray that God will bless you and keep